1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 248 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man.
You know, I love to hear that.
Yeah, well, it's been a rough week, but you know what? I'm being positive, so I'm saying I'm doing good, man.
Well, you have to stay positive.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to fight through adversity. We all do.
Right.
So I appreciate the enthusiasm that you bring to the studio. I like that mindset.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give some of our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Linda Hendricks.
Hey, Linda.
Sharon Summers.
What's going on, Summers?
Matthew Hurd.
Hey, Hurd.
Sloan Ryan.
Well, hey, Sloan.
Nikki Peterson.
What's up, Peterson?
Melissa Navarro.
Hey, Navarro.
Kelly Eads.
Hi, Kelly.
Kristen Schmidt.
Hey, thanks, Kristen.
Emma J.
What's going on, Emma?
Corinna Mendel.
Ooh, Corinna.
Jennifer Hershey.
Hey, Jennifer.
Stacy Nadeau.
Well, thank you, Nadeau.
Kristen Enmark.
Well, hey, Kristen.
And Justin Radwanski.
Radwanski.
So we appreciate the new support. If we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
All right.
This week we selected Ashley Bridges.
Hey, Ashley.
So big shout out to Ashley and everyone who continues to support us on Patreon. We had PayPal donations from Kathleen Martin.
Hey, thank you, Kathleen.
Kathy Anderson.
What's happening, Kathy?
Helen Ornelas.
Hey, thanks, Ornelas.
And Jennifer Warmuth.
Well, thank you, Jennifer.
So appreciate all that as well. Gibbs, right now we have a bunch of episodes out. Besides this one, we have a new TCAT. We're talking about Jake Bird, who was known as the Tacoma Axe Killer.
Yeah, what a fascinating case that is.
It is. It goes back to, the 40s, the 30s and 40s. But this is a guy who, depending on the truth,
right,
killed 2 people, 11 people, or as many as 44, which is what he has claimed.
Yeah, so check it out.
We also dropped a new Patreon episode on Saturday night about Daryl Parker, who was wrongly convicted in the 50s after coming home from work to find his wife murdered. It took him 56 years to get his name fully untarnished.
It's a long time.
It's an amazing story.
But if you're not on Patreon, man, jump on it.
Yeah,
it's a good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good time to check it out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
Today, we're talking about a series of disappearances in an area of Eastern Ireland, including the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains, known as the Vanishing Triangle. From 1993 to 1998, at least 8 women in their teens to their 30s disappeared within an 80-mile radius of Dublin. The women are Annie McCarrick, Eva Brennan, Imelda Keenan, Josephine Jojo Dullard, Kira Breen, Fiona Pender, Fiona Sinnott, and Deirdre Jacob. All of these women went missing in an area spanning from Offaly County up to Louth County, down to Wexford County, and then back north again. So we know what we're in for here, Gibbs. This is a large number of women who disappeared in about a 5-year span of time, all within, this certain area.
To never be found again.
And police were stumped at the complete lack of evidence, suggesting where the women could be at or who could be involved. Irish police undertook searches and made widespread public appeals for information. In most cases, law enforcement treated each case individually. But in the eyes of the public, I think it was pretty evident that there seemed to be maybe some type of possible connection.
Yeah, it seemed logical.
The Irish police established a task force, with one victim's family offering a €10,000 reward in return for information that would result in the recovery of their daughter's body. And I know not everybody has the means to offer up that type of reward,
Right.
but I think if you did, that would be something that you would do. You would try anything.
I would not hesitate.
No, not within your ability
Yeah.
to do so. Over the years, several persons of interest have been identified. These ranged from the victim's partners to suggesting that a serial offender could be responsible. In one case, charges were filed twice, but then dropped. No one else has been charged to date due to the absence of any real strong evidence directly linking anyone to the disappearances. With no bodies being recovered, many frustrating questions remain for the victims' families. And I think that's something that really jumps out about this case.
Yeah.
Large number of women disappearing, not a single body has been recovered. I think it's part of the reason why the Vanishing Triangle moniker
Yeah.
gets placed onto this case. It's as though these women vanished.
Very mysterious.
So let's dive into some of the details of this episode. On March 26, 1993, during the afternoon, 26-year-old Annie McCarrick, an American, left her home in Sandymount on the south side of Dublin City, where she lived with two roommates. Originally from Long Island, New York, Annie had moved to Ireland in early 1993. She worked part-time at a restaurant and was planning to become a teacher. Annie had told her roommates that morning about her plans to walk in the Wicklow Mountains after heading out to get groceries. At 3:15 p.m., she caught the bus from Sandymount to Ranelagh and then the number 44 bus onto the Wicklow town of Enniskerry at 3:40 p.m. The next day, March 27th, Annie failed to turn up to work. That evening, she failed to answer the door when two friends who showed up for a prearranged dinner at her apartment knocked on her door. They were immediately concerned. So her friends contacted Annie's parents back in New York. Annie was reported as missing, and her parents jumped on a flight to Ireland, beginning an unsuccessful search for their daughter.
You know, to be her parents to get that type of phone call, the flight from New York to Ireland, longest flight in the world to them, and then to get there and to search and try to locate your daughter and for it to end up being unsuccessful. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, we always think about the families, right? In these situations, I think to get this call is always going to be extremely difficult. There's an extra layer here where you're a long ways away from your daughter.
Yeah.
That must have been the most helpless feeling, to be on that airplane, not to be able to do a thing.
I think my anxiety level would be through the roof.
Oh, absolutely. That summer, on the afternoon of July 25th, 1993, 39-year-old Eva Brennan visited her parents in the South Dublin suburb of Rathgar. Eva was close to her family. She visited them every day, but she preferred her own company. And other than attending mass, she only ever left the house to see her parents. And she never went out at night. After visiting with her parents, Eva set off for home, which was in walking distance from her family's house. When 2 days passed without a word from Eva, her father went to her apartment. We mentioned it, right? She talked to her family, visited with them daily. This was entirely out of character for her, not to make contact with them every day. There was no answer at the apartment. Eva's father was worried, and he fetched one of his employees from the nearby Horse and Hound pub, which the family owned. Back at Eva's apartment building, the two men gained access by breaking a window. According to the Irish Mirror, Eva's father found the jacket his daughter had worn to lunch the day she was last seen. So they knew that she had made it back home safely, but they had no idea where she was now. Eva's family reported her as missing to the local police.
Again, how devastating is that? You know, you're looking for your daughter. You can't find her anywhere. And you know that you're going to keep looking, and they keep turning up with nothing.
22-year-old Imelda Keenan lived with her fiancé Mark in an apartment on William Street in Waterford City in the county of Waterford. Imelda was studying a computer course at Waterford Central Technical Institute. She grew up in County Laois, but Imelda relocated to the southeast of Ireland when she was 15 to be closer to two of her brothers. At around 1:30 p.m. on January 3rd, 1994, Imelda told Mark she was going out to the post office to collect her welfare check, according to the Irish Independent. Not long after leaving the apartment, she was seen crossing near Lombard Street, near the Tower Hotel. When Imelda didn't return home, Mark contacted her family, who came around and found her glasses at the couple's apartment. Her family knew right away that Imelda could not have run away because she never went anywhere without her glasses. She also hadn't taken any money with her, nor a change of clothes. But Imelda has never been seen or heard from again. 21-year-old Josephine Duller lived between the south side of Dublin and her hometown of Callan in County Kilkenny for about 2 years. Known as JoJo, she was the youngest of 5 children, and she was raised by her siblings following the death of her parents. JoJo studied to become an esthetician, but eventually dropped out of her course. According to the Irish Times, on the evening of November 9th, 1995, JoJo had been out with friends at the Bruxelles bar in Dublin. She was due to catch a bus home to Callan, but she missed it. So she did the next best thing. She caught another bus taking her to Naas in nearby County Kildare, which was in the same direction. After stopping at Naas, JoJo was believed to have hitched a ride to the town of Kilcullen and then another to the town of Moon. This was where JoJo was last seen, using a payphone. She called a friend to say she'd try to hitch another ride to the town of Carlow, about 10 miles away, where she could stay with a friend. She told her friend on the phone that a car had just pulled up and then abruptly hung up the phone. But she never made it home to Kilkenny.
That just seemed like a really crazy night. Taking a bus here, taking a car here, going over here. And you wonder, did somebody focus on her? Did they target her? Was it one of the drivers? Was it a passerby?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at some of the drivers, right? Maybe she hitched some rides here. Was this just a crime of opportunity for a predator who picked up a young woman? It's very possible. We know it has happened for many, many years.
It sure has.
In the summer of 1996, 25-year-old Fiona Pender was living with her boyfriend John in Tullamore, County Offaly. Fiona was 7 months pregnant and eagerly awaiting the birth of her first child. She was well known in her hometown, where she'd worked as a model and a hairdresser. Around 6 a.m. on August 23rd, John said goodbye to his girlfriend before leaving their apartment to work at his family farm 8 miles away. He told police Fiona was suffering from a bout of heartburn and was still in bed when he left. But when John returned home, Fiona was gone. So Gibbs, as we go through these disappearances, there are some similarities with some, but there are definitely some differences.
Yeah.
We have people who are known to be out and about, some hitching rides. We have some whose last known whereabouts are their own residence. So we said right up front, right, that police treated these individually. I can see from what we've talked about so far, maybe why that occurred. There are quite a few differences in some of these disappearances. Almost 6 months after Fiona disappeared, 17-year-old only child Kira Breen went missing from her home in Dundalk in County Louth. Ciara's mother, Bernadette, told police that they both went to bed just after midnight on February 13th, 1997. Around 2 a.m., Bernadette got up to use the bathroom. When she looked into Ciara's room, the bed was empty. According to the journal.ie, police believed Ciara had snuck out during the night and had intended to return home. There were no signs of forced entry, but one of the front windows had been left open. Ciara hadn't taken any money or really any personal effects with her.
So again, if you were going to leave for a while or run away, you would want some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think we talk about this in a lot of missing persons cases. To me, that really clues you in on the fact that these individuals, they didn't leave and expect to be gone for a long period of time. Because, in the one case, someone would not leave their eyeglasses behind when they desperately needed them. And who's going to leave without taking their money, clothes, other personal items? It just doesn't add up. And then a year passed. In early 1998, 19-year-old Fiona Sinnott was living in the town of Ballyhit in County Wexford with her 11-month-old baby girl. Fiona was close to her family, whom she saw about once a week, but she was no longer in a relationship with the father of her daughter. On the night of February 8th, 1998, Fiona went out with some friends to Butler's Pub in the Wexford town of Broadway. A couple of weeks passed, and Fiona failed to show up at her weekly family meetup. They reported her missing, but she was never seen again. And then around 6 months later, in County Kildare, 18-year-old Deidre Jacob was on summer vacation from college and back home with her parents in Newbridge. Deidre had just finished her first year of a teaching degree at St. Mary's University in London. On the afternoon of July 28, 1998, Deidre took her Caterpillar brand bag and made the 20-minute walk to the local branch of AIB Bank to get a bank draft to pay for her university accommodation. She then went to the post office to mail the payment. According to the Irish Times, along the way, she visited her grandmother, who owned a store in town. When she had completed her errands, Deidre left for home. She was last seen around 3 p.m. bypassing motorists not far from her driveway on Barrettstown Road, but she never made it to the front door. Police and Deidre's parents were dumbfounded as to how she could have been either snatched off the street so close to home or had gotten into a car without any witnesses seeing it. Because numerous people had seen her just moments before within sight of her house.
And all of a sudden, there was no trace of Deidre. She's never been found, either has her bag.
So again, Gibbs, with this disappearance, we have added elements, differences. Deidre made it all the way home. We know that based on eyewitnesses, but she never made it inside her home. So you have a bunch of people seeing her, but somehow she vanishes and those people don't see a thing. It just adds a completely different element to this disappearance.
Right.
All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break. Listen, folks, if you've ever wanted to make your home feel safer, there is no better time than now. Right now, our friends at Simply Safe are giving True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners access to their New Year's holiday deals. 20% off their award-winning home security, and your first month is free when you sign up for the interactive monitoring service. I've been using Simply Safe for many, many years now. I love how easy it is to set up, and I just keep adding sensors. Water sensors, freeze sensors, and the cameras that they've come out with are amazing. We love Simply Safe because it has everything you need to make your home safe. Indoor and outdoor cameras, comprehensive sensors, all monitored around the clock by trained professionals who send help the instant you need it. It was even named Best Home Security Systems of 2021 by U.S. News and World Report. You can easily customize the system for your home online in minutes. There are no long-term contracts or commitments. It's a really easy way to start feeling a bit more peace of mind in the new year. But hurry, take 20% off your Simply Safe system, and your first month is free when you sign up for the interactive monitoring service. Visit simplysafe.com/TCAT today. Go to simplysafe.com/TCAT, TCAT. Bomba's mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. So when you buy Bombas, you are also giving to someone in need. Bombas designed their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxuriously cozy feel. They make their products from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere. Most people know Bombas for their socks, and their socks are amazing. There's a pair of Bombas socks for everything you do, and they come in tons of different options. What I didn't know is that they make some of the most amazing slippers that you'll ever wear. My whole family is wearing these Bombas slippers. Some are lightweight, some are Sherpa lined, but we love them all. And don't forget their t-shirts, their underwear. You got to check it all out. Go to bombas.com/TCATU and get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/TCATTU for 20% off. Bombas.com/TCATU. So now let's dive into the investigations. We mentioned it, right? Not all of these cases ended up being linked. The disappearances were initially treated separately by Irish police. Annie McCarrick's devastated parents hired a private investigator to look into the search records for their daughter throughout the Enniskerry area and hundreds of acres of wooded areas in the Wicklow Mountains. One sighting that was noted placed Annie at the Enniskerry post office. Another, according to the Irish Independent, placed Annie at a South County Dublin pub named Johnny Fox's. The venue was about 6 kilometers away from Enniskerry, which is a very long walk, Gibbs.
Yeah, that's a pretty good distance.
The pub's doorman claimed that he saw Annie between 9 and 11 p.m. that night, in the company of a man in his 20s. He said the pair left the lounge area of the pub and went into the pub's cabaret room. But this sighting couldn't be confirmed, and no one saw Annie leave the pub itself. Her parents eventually returned to Long Island after 6 long months with not a single answer.
Frustrating.
Well, we talked about how tough that long flight would have been. Now, you've got parents who have spent 6 months away from home, searching for their daughter, and they essentially come up with nothing.
Yeah.
So, day after day, how discouraged would they have been? It would grow. It would eat at you, right? Bad thoughts would start to creep in, I imagine, because the longer we go, the worse things would get in my mind. That's how I would think it would be.
And you wouldn't want to get on that plane.
No, nobody would want to leave their daughter behind. But 6 months is a long time.
Yeah.
To be away from your home. I'm assuming, people have jobs, they have bills they got to pay, and maybe you just need to regroup.
Yeah, regroup, put some trust into the local authorities.
But you're right. Had to have been very difficult to get on the plane home. To the frustration of Eva Brennan's parents, law enforcement didn't appear to take their daughter's disappearance seriously at all. Eva was said to have been experiencing depression just before she went missing. As far as the police were concerned, she may have run away. She may have even taken her own life somewhere where she didn't want to be found. The problem was there wasn't any evidence to suggest Eva had taken her own life, given the fact that her body hadn't been found. As far as the Brennans knew, police didn't take an interest until about 3 months after Eva went missing. And this was tough for them, Gibbs, because you think about 3 months. That's a lot of valuable time that really had been lost by that stage. And the Brennans didn't hold back. They were scathing in their criticism of the police for failing to investigate Eva's disappearance properly. But one theory that took hold with police was that Eva may have known double murderer Michael Bambrick. Bambrick was convicted of killing 2 women and burying them in the garden of a home in southwest Dublin in the early 1990s. The problem is there was no evidence to support the theory he'd killed Eva, and so it really went nowhere.
Kind of fizzled out.
There was very little information to go on when it came to the disappearance of Imelda Keenan. Imelda had been seen crossing the road by 2 women on the afternoon she disappeared, but really that was it. The police had nothing to go on.
Yeah, a little bit bigger mystery there.
The day before Fiona Pinder's disappearance, the expecting mother met up with her own mother and brother to shop for baby clothes. The Westmeath Independent reported that Fiona gave no indication she was planning to leave, and she didn't take her passport, credit cards, or even a change of clothes. When police searched her apartment, there were no signs of a disturbance or a struggle. Investigators broadened the search effort to farmland, canals, lakes, and forests across Laois and Offaly, but again, they came up empty-handed. In the case of Ciara Breen, police didn't have much to go on, besides the theory that she'd snuck out in the middle of the night to meet an unknown person.
So their hands are tied.
There's very little to go on in many of these disappearances, but of all the women to have gone missing, it was the disappearance of Fiona Sinnott, where police had at least somewhere to start. It emerged that when Fiona left Butler's pub, she was in the company of her ex-boyfriend, Sean. He later told police that after leaving the pub, he walked Fiona home, where he slept over on the couch. According to the journal.ie, Sean explained to investigators that after arriving home, Fiona had been experiencing pain in her arm, so she went to bed. Sean said that the following morning when she woke up, she told him she was still in pain and was going to see a doctor. But Fiona didn't have any private transport. She didn't have money to catch a bus, so she told Sean that she'd take her chances, hitching a ride to her doctor's office. Sean told police he gave Fiona €3 so that she wouldn't need to hitch. But before Fiona left the house, Sean's mother arrived by car to pick him up. The pair drove back to Sean's family home. As detectives made further inquiries, it emerged that Fiona never made it to the doctor's office that day. When investigators searched her house, they noted items belonging to her and her daughter, such as clothes and personal effects were missing. It was even reported by the Irish Sun that Fiona may have gone off with an English truck driver. In the days before her disappearance, Fiona had been seen at Butler's pub with the man and spent the night with him. People started to wonder whether she'd even left the country. Even though this theory was quickly ruled out, Fiona's case wasn't treated as a missing person until the man had been eliminated as a suspect.
So we got a few things going on in that one.
We do. I think what we're left with, though, is that, again, if you're not treating the case as a missing person early on, I don't know how long exactly it took to eliminate this man as a suspect, but obviously you're losing a lot of valuable time.
Yes.
It wasn't as though they were doing no investigative work, but it wasn't missing person case type work. That's my thinking. When it came to JoJo Dullard, police managed to track down the men who had given her rides from Naas to Moon, and both were eliminated. In one way, this was a relief, but it was also frustrating for her family. According to RTE News, JoJo's family was frustrated with the lack of interest from local police, who dismissed the Dullards' concerns and basically reassured them that JoJo would probably turn up in a few days. Boy, have we heard that in so many cases.
We have.
Do not worry. I'm sure your son or daughter will return in a few days.
Yeah, just give it time.
Now, to be fair, she was an adult. And in some cases, these people are adults. And so I do think in the past, police have taken a different tact, right? A different path with people who are over the age of 18 and, have the ability to go off and do things. I don't understand it at all when we're talking about minors.
I don't either.
And we've seen that, and it's infuriating. But I think even with adults, it seems as though in some cases, police don't take all of the factors into account, right? We talked about people leaving without eyeglasses, people leaving without money or a change of clothes. Okay, well, where are you going that you're going to return from in a few days? How are you getting by?
Yeah.
With basically nothing but the clothes you're wearing. When investigators searched phone records, they found a call had been made at 11:37 p.m. on the night in question to a friend of JoJo's named Mary. Mary told investigators JoJo had hung up the phone because she was getting into a car. Even though police failed to identify the driver, a report came in of JoJo leaning inside the rear door of a dark-colored Toyota Carina, about 50 yards from the phone box. Apart from an additional sighting of JoJo walking along a road around midnight in Castle Dermot, 5 miles from Moon, there was little to suggest what may have happened to her. So there is some information here, though.
There is.
There's a sighting.
Yeah.
More so than just, I saw this person walking down the street. This is a little more specific. I saw JoJo leaning inside the rear door of a dark colored Toyota Carina. Now, I don't know what a Carina is. It's not something that is sold here in the U.S. That must be specific to maybe certain countries in Europe.
It's a fancy car.
Is it?
No.
Okay. So you're just guessing now.
I'm just guessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was along the lines of maybe a Corolla or, something like that.
Maybe. It's a Toyota.
That part we know. In 1998, following the disappearance of Deidre Jacob, Irish police formed Operation Trace to investigate the string of disappearances. The task force was headed by Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, who later wrote a book about the investigation entitled Missing Presumed. In his book, Bailey details how in the days following Fiona Sinnott's disappearance, locals reported seeing a pile of black trash bags outside her home. Upon hearing this news, a farmer in a nearby area of Wexford contacted police to say he'd found some similar bags containing items labeled with Fiona's name dumped in one of his fields. Now, he didn't realize that there might be a significance to these items at the time, so he incinerated the bag, thinking that they were just trash. But I think with this revelation, Gibbs, it was clear to investigators that Fiona had not run away.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear at that point, right?
So you can't blame this guy at all. Obviously he had no idea.
No, how would you?
You find a bunch of trash bags, you got to do something with them.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the argument that, should you call the police because it's got somebody's name on it? I don't know that many people would.
I think people are just going to think somehow it ended up in my yard. I need to get them out of here.
Right. Somebody dumped their trash in my field.
Yeah.
So I'm going to burn it. I got to get rid of it. Now, looking back, I'm sure the guy feels terrible.
Sure.
But that's with having the knowledge that this woman had gone missing. I think the one thing that you would love to know was exactly, what was inside of those trash bags.
Yeah.
Was there some significance to the contents? In 1999, The Sun reported a new development in Kira Breen's case. A 34-year-old man named Liam Mullen was arrested on suspicion of murdering Kira, but he was released without charge, given a lack of evidence.
So it sounds like they got close, but didn't have enough to move it forward, and that would be obviously disappointing to family and friends.
Yeah, I mean, with these types of things, and again, we don't have all the particulars. You'd really love to know, okay, what was it that led them to arrest this guy?
Yeah.
And then what did they not have that when, let's say, a prosecutor or whoever looked at the case, they made the decision, we don't have enough.
Yeah, we can't go forward with this.
Right. We don't know. By 2005, Operation Trace had been significantly wound down. But this didn't stop Fiona Sinnott's case from being upgraded to a murder investigation. By this point, police didn't believe there was any link between her case and the other missing women. According to the Irish Independent, detectives determined Fiona had been the victim of suspected partner violence for at least 3 years in the lead up to her disappearance, but she had never reported it. So I do find it interesting. Initially, they don't find any link, right, with these disappearances. But at some point, Gibbs, they made the decision to form the task force because you do have a large number of disappearances. And then the task force, as they always do, eventually starts to wind down. There's just so long that you can pour significant amounts of resources into that type of task force.
Well, sure, yeah.
And then they ultimately make the decision that there's no link between Fiona's case and the other missing women based on this suspected domestic violence.
Right.
But police hadn't given up on searching for Fiona Pender. In 2008, the Westmeath Independent reported on a large-scale excavation operation in Montague Woods in the Slieve Bloom Mountains. Unfortunately, the excavation yielded nothing. Meanwhile, the desperate parents of Imelda Keenan announced a €10,000 reward in return for information, resulting in the recovery of their daughter's body.
So efforts are going on everywhere, right?
They are, but a lot of time has passed. And I think that's demonstrated by the reward specifically stating in return for information resulting in the recovery of their daughter's body. Early on, that would say information leading to her whereabouts or recovery, or, the wording would be different. But we're over 10 years on.
Yeah.
Now at this point, investigators from the United States had still been working on American Annie McCarrick's case, according to the Irish Times. This led to a former IRA member being identified as a solid suspect in 2010. Tips placed the man at Johnny Fox's pub, where he was said to have met Annie and bragged to her about his past. And it was thought, Gibbs, that at some point he realized that he had said too much, and he decided that Annie would have to die. This theory had the man driving Annie into the Wicklow Mountains, where he killed her and hid her body. As detailed in the book Missing Presumed, the man told some associates to ensure Annie's body would never be found, and that police were thrown off the scent. Later that year, the killer was said to have been shipped off to the U.S. by the IRA. So interesting theory. Again, I don't know what facts really support it.
Right.
You've got some tips that say the man was there, Annie was there. It is an interesting theory.
It is.
In 2014, police searched for Fiona Pender for 2 weeks in a forested area in County Laois after receiving some information, but they found nothing. There really was nothing to suggest Fiona had ever been there.
So again, just a little bit of hope, and then the air's let out.
Yeah, but what I will say is we're talking about 2014. And I think that does tell you that police had not given up, because now we're, over 15 years on. They get some new information and they do a 2-week search. A year later, there was somewhat of a break in Ciara Breen's case. According to the Irish Times, Liam Mullen, who had been charged back in 1999, was again arrested for Ciara's murder. This came from sightings of Liam and Ciara in a 16-acre area of marshland known as Balmer's Bog, off the Ardee Road in Dundalk, on the night she went missing. But again, Liam was released without charge. So you can look at these two arrests and wonder, okay, were they grasping at straws?
Yeah.
And I guess you could say, yes, they were, because ultimately someone made the decision that you can't charge this guy. The evidence just is not there.
Right.
Well, let's look at it from this guy Liam's perspective. If he really had nothing to do with Kira's disappearance, with her presumed death, that stinks for him. To be arrested twice for, her murder, obviously that's going to taint your reputation. There's no way around it. Now, you're not charged, but even an arrest, and especially two arrests, it's going to follow you around.
Sure is.
Now, conversely, if he was involved in her disappearance, then it was the mere fact that they just couldn't put enough evidence together that let him off the hook. So you can look at it both ways.
It's a good point.
But innocent until proven guilty, so
Yeah.
you kind of have to look at it that way. The 20th anniversary of Deidre Jacobs' disappearance in July 2018 marked her case being upgraded to a murder investigation and a new public appeal for information. The following year, news broke that a priest in Kilkenny had received an anonymous letter containing information referencing certain missing women. According to KCLR News, the letter was handed to the police, but we just don't know any more about the contents of the letter at this point.
Would love to know that.
Yeah, we'd love to know that. It's some of what is extremely frustrating about some of these unsolved cases. Obviously, if you're not going to trial, then there's a lot of details in these cases that are not going to be made public. Probably would at a trial, but right now they're being withheld. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive. What's one thing you'd purchase with a little extra savings? Maybe the newest and greatest, latest technology, maybe a weighted blanket. Maybe it's that new self-care trend that you keep hearing about. Well, Progressive wants to make sure you're getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service day or night. They have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need them most, they're at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. My wife and I the other day were going through our bills and we couldn't believe how many different subscriptions we had coming out of our account that we didn't even use anymore. We didn't even know they were still coming out. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or that you simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. And one reason is because companies make subscriptions really hard to cancel. Well, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/unsolved. Go right now. Truebill.com/unsolved. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/unsolved. So we've talked about some, but let's look at some additional persons of interest, potential suspects. And I think to do that, we have to start by looking at the victim's partners. We mentioned it. Fiona Pender was pregnant and living with her boyfriend, John. According to the journal.ie, there has only ever been one suspect in Fiona's disappearance, but he's never been charged. It's not clear whether this is John, but he would seem a likely candidate given the fact that he was the last person to see her. The problem is there's nothing in the research to suggest his alibi of working at the family farm either checked out or did not check out. Police believe Fiona left her apartment willingly and got into a vehicle with someone she knew. And then next we have a young mother, Fiona Sennett. There was little to support the idea Fiona had run away, leaving her daughter behind. We do know some mothers are known to go off grid from time to time, especially if they're under pressure, life becomes overwhelming. But police believe that not only did Fiona meet with foul play, but she knew her killer well. And detectives are focusing on one person. The man's name has never been made public, but many assume investigators may be looking at her former boyfriend, Sean. We said he'd walked Fiona home from the pub, was the last person to see her, and failed to report her missing. Then there's the possibility some of the women fell victim to separate individuals, which would mean that not all of the cases are linked. This can be seen in the scenarios linking Annie McCarrick to a former IRA member, Kira Breen's alleged connection to Liam Mullen, and Eva Brennan's supposed link to murderer Michael Bambrick. But Eva's sister has dismissed Bambrick as the killer. She stated there was nothing to suggest Eva even knew him or had ever been to the places he frequented. A theory that the media and the Irish police initially believed was a possibility of a suspected serial killer. They believe he was responsible for the string of disappearances and presumed murders. In 2007, 2 FBI agents went to Dublin to provide input on the investigation. After analyzing the case files, they concluded the women had fallen victim to a white serial killer, married, and in his 30s.
Generic.
Well, unfortunately it is, right? Based on all the cases that we've done, that is by far the most likely offender profile that you hear from the FBI.
Yeah.
But it's backed up by history, right? Most serial killers are white, married, 30s to 40s. I mean, you can give an age range, but
Right.
It just happens to be. As the investigation progressed, one serial offender who stood out as possibly fitting the bill was a guy by the name of Larry Murphy. Murphy had a history of violence against women and had been convicted and imprisoned for the rape and attempted murder of a woman in the Wicklow Mountains in 2000. It wasn't long before he became the prime suspect in the disappearances of Annie McCarrick, JoJo Dullard, and Deidre Jacob. Suspicion around Murphy's involvement gained traction on the basis that the 3 women had all last been seen in an area close to the village of Baltinglass, where Murphy lived. He was also said to have made a drunken confession to another prison inmate that he killed Deidre. To date, police have spoken with Murphy several times as part of the ongoing investigation, but he's denied any knowledge or involvement. The main stumbling block preventing police from pursuing this avenue of inquiry is that there just isn't anything solid linking Murphy to any of the cases so far. As far as Deidre Jacob's parents are concerned, they don't feel Murphy killed their daughter, given that police have been unable to place him in the same place as Deidre on the day of her disappearance.
It's a lot of information.
And you have this drunken confession.
Sure.
Alleged drunken confession. Now, how'd he get drunk? I'm assuming that was some toilet wine.
Yeah.
Which I've never had. Doesn't sound good.
Doesn't sound good at all.
I'm not in the habit of eating or drinking anything that is made inside my toilet.
Well, I would caution you from that anyway.
But I've never been to prison, so I've never had to.
Yeah.
Because I have what's called a refrigerator.
Well, stay that course.
In 2006, ABC News reported a potential new suspect in the disappearances of Annie, JoJo, and Deirdre. Violent serial child sex offender and rapist Robert Howard, known as the Werewolf, was known to be in the Enniskerry area around the time Annie disappeared and was said to be linked with up to 6 other missing women. At this stage, apart from his offender profile, there's been little made public to link him to the other disappearances. Like Larry Murphy, really, unless something more meaningful comes to light, Howard appears to be just another name, kind of thrown into the mix with nothing substantial to support the theory that he was involved. And Gibbs, this is something else we see in unsolved cases, right? Time and time again. I get it. Police are trying to solve these cases. You also have a lot of, people online who try to dissect these cases. So what happens is a lot of bad people, known offenders, get their name thrown out there, get thrown into the mix. But I think it's hard to call these anything more than a theory.
Yeah.
Until, really something comes to light that puts a little bit of, evidence to it.
Yeah, you got to have some evidence.
According to the Irish Times, as recently as October 2020, Irish police have all but eliminated the idea of a serial killer. The current working theory is that all the women met with foul play at the hands of someone they knew before going missing.
Well, it's a good theory.
It is a good theory because isn't it more likely that when someone is killed, they're killed at the hands of someone they know? I don't know the percentages. We talk about a lot of serial killers. We also talk about a lot of non-serial killers, but in a lot of cases that we cover, the women are killed by people in their lives, or at least people they know, acquaintances. Maybe it's someone that gets fixated. I think you talked about that earlier.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe not a complete stranger, someone that they know on the fringe, and this person latches onto them, becomes fixated, and strikes.
Yeah.
In terms of the individual cases, there was a breakthrough in 2020 in the case of Annie McCarrick. The Irish Independent reported an announcement made by private investigators out of the U.S. that a member of the public had provided information. This information all but confirmed that the sighting of Annie at Johnny Fox's pub was a case of mistaken identity. Soon after Annie disappeared, the witness who was working in Poppy's Cafe in Enniskerry the day Annie went missing told police she saw a woman matching Annie's description in the company of a man with a square-shaped face. Okay. Are we talking blockjaw? What are we talking here?
It's a really square face.
She said that the pair left together. Now, Annie wasn't believed to have been in a relationship, but this new lead focused on someone she could have dated. Then in May 2021, another witness came forward saying they saw Annie walking along the R752 road towards Rathnew in Wicklow County. So, I said breakthrough, Gibbs. Is it a breakthrough, or is it just more information that can't possibly be confirmed?
Right.
A sighting of Annie at Johnny Fox's pub. Now someone's saying it wasn't Annie, it was someone else. But how do you confirm which is true?
Yeah.
They can't both be true.
No. So you're kind of a dead end at that point with that lead.
Well, at least until something more solid comes along. There have also been developments regarding JoJo Dullard. In November 2020, a truck driver came forward to police saying that he saw a naked woman running through Moon on the night JoJo disappeared. That same year, JoJo's case was upgraded to a murder investigation. In April 2021, the Irish Mirror reported that police were investigating 2 new potential leads into JoJo's murder. One of these relates to a resident of Moon who owned property in the local area. According to RTE News, the man was believed to have been seen sporting a scratch on his face not long after JoJo's disappearance. He was also understood to have lied to local police about his movements the night JoJo disappeared. All right, so there's some things of interest there as well. But again, I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
What does it prove? It seems suspicious.
Right.
Scratches on the face. All right, where'd you get those from? If he really did lie to police, okay, why did you lie? But where's the smoking gun?
Yeah, where's this going to take you?
Right. Where is the concrete evidence? The other thing I want to talk about is why did it take so long in, some of these cases to change them from a missing persons report to a murder investigation? Was it just information that came in that led them to the change? Because obviously, we're 20 plus years on.
Yeah.
In these cases. So it doesn't seem as though it's solely based on time and the fact that these women have never, surfaced or anything like that. And I don't know that all of them have been upgraded to a murder investigation. So they must have to do with needing a certain amount of information that leads them to make that change.
I think you have to have some type of information that would lead you to believe this person's been murdered.
And again, we may not know exactly all the information, right? We've talked about some tips, some theories, some alleged sightings. Maybe some of that is enough, or maybe they have more than what they have made public. And I think that's a good bet. I actually think that occurs in many, many cases. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Another search for the bodies of JoJo and Deirdre took place in October 2021. This was reported by the BBC. Over 3 weeks, Irish police searched wooded areas on the Kildare and Wicklow border, but no human remains were found. And sadly, very little new information has come forward about the other 5 women in recent years. Liam Mullen, the man who was arrested for the murder of Ciara Breen, has since passed away. So has serial sex offender Robert Howard, who we mentioned earlier. And Gibbs, I think one of the ripple effects of the tragedy of these disappearances is the way in which it's forever changed the lives of the victims' families. And we see that in every case. Fiona Sinnott's daughter is now 23 years old, but has no answers about what happened to her mother. And over the years, the parents and siblings of some of the victims have died, never having any type of resolution. Among these individuals was Fiona Pinder's father, Sean, who regrettably took his own life over the heartbreak of losing his daughter.
Yeah, I can understand. It has to be very tough to live through that.
And unfortunately, this is something we also see in many unsolved cases. Years and years go by. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, heartbreakingly waiting for answers on what happened to their loved ones. In the end, some people just can't do it.
Yeah.
Or can only do it for so long.
They try to hold on,
Yeah.
and just can't.
But it's that ripple effect. It happens in unsolved cases. It happens in the cases that we talk about on TCAT as well.
Right.
The actions of these monsters, regardless of whether we're talking about one serial offender here or multiple bad people, their actions have negative effects on so many different people.
Yeah.
They change so many lives. Aside from, obviously taking lives, which we suspect that they did. If you move forward with the theory that so many years have passed that these women were all murdered, it's hard to comprehend.
It is.
The devastation and the toll that it takes on so many different people. If you have information on the disappearances of Annie McCarrick, Eva Brennan, Imelda Keenan, Josephine Dullard, Ciara Breen, Fiona Pinder, Fiona Sinnott, or Deirdre Jacob, you can contact the Irish Police Missing Persons Unit in Ireland. So, tough case.
It is tough.
To me, for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you have 8 women who, I think we're assuming at this point, most likely lost their lives. The families, the friends, we talked about that. The devastation, it does sound, like there have been some resources put forth by the Irish police in looking into these cases. I know the families weren't happy about some of it. That's understandable.
Yeah.
If your loved one goes missing, are you ever going to be happy? Are you ever going to think that the authorities are doing enough? Probably not.
No.
I don't know that I would ever think that.
No, of course not.
Until you solve it, I don't think you're doing enough.
Yeah. You're not doing enough, not enough resources.
You don't care.
Yeah.
I understand that. And maybe there is some of that. Not acting quick enough. Being a little cavalier with the missing persons label and thinking that, okay, they just went off, they'll be back, not jumping on it soon enough. Maybe you lost the time where you could have really gained some valuable clues or evidence.
But on the flip side, sometimes they do a great job, right? There's just nothing to follow up on.
And sometimes that's the problem.
Yeah. If there's just nothing else out there.
Sometimes they don't miss anything because there's nothing to miss.
Yeah.
And you don't know always what's the case. But that is it for our episode on the Vanishing Triangle of Ireland. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. It's Emma here from the UK and Silver Spot Ceramics. I was just listening to your Unsolved episode and I was thinking about Bryce. I'm by no means an expert at all, but thinking about his age and his gender, it is more prevalent in men. It could be that it was the onset of schizophrenia. He does sound like he was having a psychotic break from his behavior. And if he was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, or taking drugs and alcohol, then that can make it worse too. Maybe he had a psychotic break and did end his life, maybe not there at the scene, but somewhere else. I know this won't have any effect on closure for his parents, and my heart breaks for them. It really does. But it was just something I was thinking about. I listen to a lot of true crime. But anyway, I hope you guys are well. Keep your heads on a swivel and keep your own time ticking. Goodbye from the UK.
Well, thank you so much for the voicemail. I can always tell, Gibbs, how many different theories or, interesting things that people think of about an episode by the number of voicemails. And we really have received a lot of voicemails on the Bryce Las Pisas case.
We have.
Hey guys, it's Eric from Oklahoma. It took me right at 6 months from the time I discovered your podcast, but I completed all of TCAT and Unsolved. Plus, I'm about 55 episodes deep into criminology also. I love what you do at the show and how you interact. The research is top-notch and the presentation's great. I work in the justice system, so I greatly appreciate how you stick to the facts and solid theories rather than just jumping on popular hot-button topics. Oklahoma has a ton of odd and obscure crimes, and I've noticed you've already covered a few of them and done it very well. I'm definitely Team Mike, so you guys can arm wrestle over which one I mean. Keep up the great work, stay safe, and keep your own time ticking.
Very nice voicemail. We appreciate it very much. We have done quite a few Oklahoma cases. We haven't been back there in a while, I don't think. We probably need to look at something from that state because they do have their share of very interesting cases.
Yeah.
Not that every state doesn't, to be honest with you.
Check them out, man.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Wanda calling from North Carolina. I just wanted to call really quick to say I just finished listening to the Rice La Paza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Anyway, I just finished listening to that case on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. And I wanted to call in and say I agree with Gibby. He was saying something near the end about how Bryce may have been able to walk away from the crash if he was intoxicated, and how he heard before, if a person has been drinking and driving, most times those people are able to walk away because their bodies are more relaxed. And Mike, I know you said you had never heard that before, so I just wanted to call in and back up Gibby and tell him that, yes, I've heard that as well, that in a lot of cases. And again, love you guys. Keep up the great work and keep your own time ticking. Talk to you later. Bye.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've actually received a lot of emails and voicemails about that very subject.
Sure.
People are quick to defend you if they think
Second year of med school, we learned that.
Countering you or dismissing you or anything like that. And I did look it up. It's absolutely true. So kudos to you for, knowing that and kind of interjecting that into the story.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. It's Lakota from Montana. I've been listening to your guys' podcast ever since you guys dropped your second episode. I just want to say that I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You get me through my Mondays at work when I listen to you guys. I listen to TCAT Unsolved, and I'm a huge fan of criminology, so shout out to Morph 2. But I figured I'd finally give you guys a call and tell you guys that you guys are amazing. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Wow, she's been with us for over 5 years.
Yeah, that's great, man.
That is amazing.
Love that.
And, getting a lot of voicemails and emails from people who started listening to us, let's say in high school. Now they're graduating college. I didn't even realize that, so many people were listening like in high school. And I think that kind of dawned on both of us over the last couple of years from voicemails and things like that. So, but obviously we appreciate it. The long-term support, listening, being with us all that time. It's amazing. All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.